entrepreneurs of the world. My name is Glenn Turansky. I'm a member of the advisory board here at One Business World, the platform that hosts leading entrepreneurs of the world. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World is one of the most comprehensive global entrepreneurial platforms and features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest in industry developments. Our goal is to provide the global business and entrepreneurial communities with a window into the minds of those who are shaping the future of the world. Today, we're very happy to welcome leading global entrepreneur, innovator, advisor, and mentor, Roger Mader. As co-founder and managing partner of Ampersand, Roger continues his quest to promote free markets to produce uncommon growth using uncommon means. Roger built Ampersand as a partnership of peer practitioners to employ the methods of design and anthropology to craft better offerings, experiences, and enterprises. He assembles teams to investigate real and perceived experiences to reveal the unmet needs and pivotal design insights that match latent demand to vital new offerings. After an early career on the launch teams for the IBM personal computer, wow, that's very impressive, and Accenture's change management practice, Roger co-founded VIA and built a global strategy firm, where he and his team first practiced the principles of transformative innovation and purpose-led organization design. Roger guided growth strategy and new service design for EY and formulated business designs for former New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani's consulting and investment firm. He led global accounts for innovative strategy firm Doblin and led commercial strategy for Fahrenheit 212, which is part of Capgemini. He served as interim global chief marketing officer of Subway, the world's largest restaurant franchise. At Subway, Roger and the leadership team successfully turned around the business to growth worldwide. His clients have included a star-studded list of AC Nielsen, American Airlines, KPMG, Hyatt, IBM, Kaiser Permanente, Kraft, Procter & Gamble, Pfizer, Siemens, just to name a few. Roger teaches strategic innovation in the Interaction Design Master's Program at the School of Visual Arts near his home in Manhattan. He has served as the founding faculty chair for Rutgers University and the University of California, Riverside Design Thinking Programs. He is the industry chair for the Digital Marketing Program at the University of South Florida, Muma College of Business. His guest lecturing includes Northwestern, Harvard Business School, NYU Stern. He serves as a coach and a mentor for students participating in Design for America. And Roger's going to be speaking to us today about Purposeful Enterprise. We look forward, Roger, to your presentation. Let me hand it off to you. Good morning, welcome, and I'll join you on the backside, okay?
Thank you very much, Glenn. I look forward to it. Thank you for hosting such a terrific event, and I'm honored to be part of it. Let me just share my screen with you, if I may. I will quickly try and spare you the egg-shaped head, but I wanted to just say that Purposeful Enterprise is the thesis of our conversation today. It's about designing your organization so that you too can change the world in a productive way. As Glenn mentioned, and I didn't realize I was going to get such an extensive introduction, Glenn, so I'll just whip through mine. I am the co-founder and operating CEO, managing partner of Ampersand, where we help big companies get small and small companies get big. We have a host of clients, and I also teach, as Glenn mentioned. He also talked about anthropology as an underpinning, and the behavior of social animals is an incredibly insightful enterprise for you to engage in to understand how to operate a company, particularly one that is made out of humans. So one of the key lessons that is at the foundation of the work that I do is recognizing that we are a selfish animal. We tend to think about ourselves first and others second. When I wake up in the morning, I think about, I'm hungry. It wasn't until I had children that I woke up and thought maybe somebody else is hungry first. But very often we are designed to think about our needs, the needs of those just around us who we care about, our tribe, if you will, maybe a little bit farther out into the community and then beyond to the unknown. And that impetus causes all kinds of misbehaviors unintentionally in a world where you are designing to serve others. So instead of me serving you through that very fundamental human error, I need to wake up and think of you first. What do you need before I think about what I might provide? Companies are just a larger manifestation of the same thing. The company thinks about what they make, what they do, and how they can push that to the marketplace. Those that are doing a great job have inverted this logic and are thinking about their customer first. What is the need and how can I serve it? We are taught from the very beginning of our business careers that supply and demand are the intersection of market opportunity, but we always start with supply. What do we make? What do we push? What if we started in a pull mentality with demand first? And in much the same way, we think of supply following demand as form follows function. You wouldn't design a building to be beautiful without first understanding what its functions require. Same thing with an automobile or any other functional attribute. A company is no different. And the offering that you bring to the marketplace requires the same level of thoughtful need of customer. Let me tell you about an example, one I'm very proud of through the efforts of others that I was allowed to be affiliated with. You may not be familiar with Pete's Super Submarines, which was founded in 1965. It was advertising on the radio at the time as Pete's Submarines, and people kept hearing it as Pizza Marines and thought they were getting a seafood pizza. So they had to rebrand it, and they called it Pete's Subway circa 1970, and you might be more familiar with it in its current form, known as Subway exclusively. By 1982, they had grown to 300 locations in 30 states by franchising their model in much the same way that McDonald's did, but with real pride of purpose. Subway intentionally designed their franchises to be the cheapest starting point for new entrepreneurs in the marketplace. So in 1982, if you were going to get if you were a new immigrant in the United States and wanted to own your own business, you could get a franchise at the cheapest one was 7-Eleven for $25,000, with the singular exception of Subway, which was $5,000. And everything else was much more significant for just the franchise fee, and they had to build out the infrastructure. So this was a major undertaking. With Subway, it was $5,000 and basically a salad bar in a hallway. It couldn't be more cost effective to launch a new offering, which is why they grew from 300 in 1982. By 1987, they had gotten to 1,000. And by 2014, they reached a peak in the US, and worldwide, they were 41,000 units, the largest restaurant franchise in the world, and it remains so to this day. However, by 2015, after they were being celebrated for this rapid growth, and I should mention that it was founded by Fred DeLuca at the age of 17. He wanted to go to medical school and couldn't afford college. So he met with his mentor, his local family physician, Dr. Peter Buck, and borrowed $1,000 to start up a sandwich shop in order to, using his mom's recipes, in order to be able to pay to go to college and ultimately to medical school. And for $1,000, Peter Buck owned 50% of Subway on a handshake with a minor. And Peter Buck just passed in the last few months. And that $1,000 had translated into several $billion in value. But unfortunately, by 2015, the Washington Post was publishing this headline: "The Rise and Fall of Subway, the world's biggest food chain." And what they were recognizing was shrinkage in the US market. The foundational market, the biggest market, was losing stores. I was asked by Subway to come in and advise on what they needed to do to turn it around. And so I met with Fred in that era, a really impressive man and a very tactical leader guiding the business on a day-to-day basis around the world. And I said to Fred, if we're going to transform the business, we're going to start not internally with recipes or food quality or anything else. We're going to start externally, and we're going to be talking to customers. And in fact, you learn more from the customers who loved you and left you than the ones who are loyal to you today, because we can find them sitting in Chipotle or McDonald's or wherever else they've gone and discover why they used to love you and they no longer do, and what they prefer and why. So I want to start with the executive team by asking, who is your customer? And his response to me was, I don't have customers. I have franchises and they have customers. And I thought, well, this is a self-made billionaire. That might be really clever. You need to think about that. He's managing his franchises. They're managing their markets. But then it occurred to me, Fred, don't you have the largest budget in the world, in the industry for advertising on behalf of your franchisees? Don't you collect revenues from them in order to centralize advertising? I said, yes. I said, well, how do you advertise to a customer who you don't know? And he thought, oh, well, this might be a crux of the problem. Go talk to my chief marketing officer and find out who our customer is. So thus began an exercise that took about a year of meeting in the market, understanding the needs of customers, reconfiguring the positioning of Subway, rebranding, and really redefining what an ideal experience would be. And you can start to see this rolling out in Subways today, not just with new logos and other branding artifacts, but with more robust sandwiches, with better breads, with better equipment to bake those breads, with more lean proteins, more fresh vegetables, etc. And ultimately what we're doing, as you look at some of the more modern Subways that are going through the refit, you'll find things like community tables and other attributes that customers told us they preferred, that they were seeing at Chipotle rather than at Subway. In fact, we had one young kid, a teenager say, and this was a really stark thing for Fred to hear, oh my gosh, I would never take a date to Subway, but yeah, I'd go to Chipotle. And that really rang true and so often hearing the voice and the pain points of the customer is a pivotal moment where you allow the inside to match the outside and transform the will and ambition of the organization to meet these needs of the customer. Along the way, I discovered a couple of things that weren't about the customer that were at least as profound. One of them was simply that Fred had this very distinct desire to keep the cost of the franchise operations to a minimum. Now that often punished customers. That meant that he fought for a long time against having toaster ovens in the franchises, even though he had to compete against new entrants who were competing based on a toasted sandwich, because he didn't want to impose that cost on them and increase his cost model. What he wanted to do in his heart of hearts was democratize the American dream. He had literally liberated his family from financial worry through his entrepreneurial success, and he wanted other, often new entrants to the American society to be able to pursue that American dream. So his goal was to keep the cost down, not necessarily to serve the customer well. That was his franchisee's job. Well, by keeping the cost down, you could sometimes create an impediment to that, and they have franchisees would have to rise and demand that toaster ovens be standardized, or demand that delivery be a feature. When Jimmy John's came along and could deliver much faster, suddenly the need for delivery showed up. And thankfully we had it instituted before COVID-19 made it so important for restaurants to be able to deliver. So one of the things I really admired was that Fred was trying to democratize the American dream and make it available to entrepreneurs of every generation. And he created more millionaires through the sweat of their own brow than any other company. What I mean by that is Microsoft and Apple and shareholders in Tesla have made millions. But Subway's millionaires are self-made. They own their business. They own the pride of their own performance. They employ their families. They serve their friends, and they support their communities. It's an incredible aspiration that Fred was able to fulfill. There was another thing I discovered that also inspired me. While I was working with him around 2017, Hurricane Maria was bearing down on Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is the host of quite a large number of Subway restaurants. The breaking news quickly turned to the island is destroyed, and Puerto Rico was literally devastated. But in the wake of that devastation, Subway's franchise development team for Puerto Rico realized that there was going to be a real problem because power goes down in Puerto Rico quite readily, and during a hurricane, for sure it's going down. And in the wake of Maria, it was down for a long time. They knew that their sub sandwiches and all their inventory was going to go down if they couldn't maintain refrigeration. So they commandeered a boat from Florida bought up all of the Honda generators they could find, you know, the kind that you pull, start, and feed with gasoline, because they knew they could get gasoline still. And they delivered them to all their Subway stores. And those Subways became the only source of illumination in the night in the wake of that hurricane. They became a center of activity. It became the destination where kids went to do their homework after hours because there was light. Then several of the Subways themselves started putting in washers and dryers because their staff couldn't wash their clothes. The development agents thought that was a great idea. They delivered washers and dryers to all the Subways, which then very quickly, rather than just washing their own clothing, became the local laundromats for the whole community. This kind of story of Subway's impact on their local communities, more than just supporting the local Little League team, is rife around the community. You see these stories all the time across Subway. No one ever hears about it. It's a very internal source of pride. The year that I was there, we awarded the Puerto Rican team, and it was a big award for community pride, in effect, and community impact. And the stories over the years are remarkable, and yet no one knew it. Subway suffered terribly. Just around this time, Fred DeLuca passed away from leukemia unexpectedly. He was thought to be in remission, and unfortunately, we lost him far too young and far too soon, and without a great succession plan in place to be able to implement all the changes that were necessary, such that by 2018, I was called back by the interim CEO to help institute all of the changes that we had recommended. He literally texted me, said, Roger, could you just come back here and do what you told us to do 3 years ago? So I thought, oh, that's a lot harder than just telling you to do it. But I was very proud of Subway, and I came and joined, and what was meant to be a 3-month exercise became a year-long assignment where I became the global chief marketing officer on an interim basis in order to stand up all of these capabilities. In the course of doing so, I realized that Subway was failing to articulate the most important thing about its offer, the thing that made it feel like a family, the thing that made so many of its franchisees vital to their local communities. And that was defining their purpose. So I took it upon myself for the CEO to work through the process to find a purpose for Subway, which I presented at the 2019 gathering of our franchisees. I was introduced as the chief marketing officer and said, let's talk about what Subway means. I want you to ask yourself a question. Why does the world need Subway? Is it for growth or profits? Is it a better sandwich or some healthy deliciousness made your way, or the world's biggest sandwich restaurant? No, those are all wonderful, but they're not why we exist. They're not why we matter in the world. Consider this little girl, one of 2 sisters raised in Compton. Contemporarily, you may have seen a movie called King Richard about the Williams sisters, who were sponsored by Nike for their incredible impact on their sport. Nike describes a purpose statement that says that their job is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And by the way, if you have a body, you are an athlete. Nike is very clear about why they exist. Inspiration and innovation to all of us who have the will and desire to move, compete, and ultimately to win. If you could describe what they're about in a word, it's about helping you, helping me pursue victory. It is what they describe as winning. It's not actually riding around in a ticker tape parade having won. It is the pursuit. It is winning along the way. And it is that struggle that is so fulfilling. It's that competition that is so rewarding. So that winning is a process, not the result. Here's another brand I'd like you to be familiar with for its purposefulness. Richard Branson is seen here with the younger Rolling Stones. Here he is rolling through Times Square on a tank in order to promote his immediately failed Virgin Cola. He learned some hard lessons about trying to go up against Coke and Pepsi in an established market, but he learned fast and went on to pursue multiple vectors of aspiration. What was remarkable about Richard Branson, he credits his mother for this, was that his job was simply to try. It wasn't to succeed, but it was to keep on trying. Because ultimately, if you demonstrate the kind of perseverance that even Thomas Edison promoted, you ultimately achieve success. And Branson organized his offerings around a brand that he aspired to as a maverick, as recognizing that his consumers wanted to be special or different, separate from the herd. And if you could describe all of the Virgin brands, and they are widely varied, everything from healthcare to cruise ships to airlines to pursuits of the stratosphere. All of their branding is about being irreverent. There's another young man you might not recognize on the beaches of Rio, where he was doing an animation short. You may know him better for one of his top creations. Here's Steamboat Willie, who became Mickey Mouse. And in the description of all that Disney attempts to do, everything from the beginning of your visit to the end of the day is meant to connote magic. Because what Disney recognized through the magic of animation, it was possible to allow children of all ages to reawaken the sense of curiosity that inspires all of us. And from a young age, what seems like magic, we become aware of underlying cause and effect. And as a result, we tend to lose our sense of fantasy and the magic that is so inspiring. Disney built an entire enterprise across, again, multiple categories in order to return the magic of youth. And he said, what you must do is do your work so well that people will want to see it again and they'll bring their friends. And for Subway, I wanted to understand that what we wanted to do was bring their friends back to taste it again. To do this, every organization has to answer 3 questions. What do we do? How do we do it? And why? Let me give you an example and show the importance of each. This is the birthplace, the nativity scene of Silicon Valley. It is the garage behind the home of the founders of Hewlett and Packard, which was founded by 2 gentlemen who were recent graduates from Stanford in engineering, and they were tinkering to put together a better metering device. And what they ultimately came up with was a series of better testing devices and metering devices that ultimately led to the formation of Silicon Valley, the expansion into silicon chips, and ultimately into the computer platforms and printers for which they're known today. If asked what HP does, they created precision calculation instruments. They do to this day. How? Through high quality and reliability. That was their key differentiator. They were going to create robust mechanical machinery that brought the age of electronics to a machine age. But why were they doing it? It wasn't clear. They were doing it because they could. They were doing it because it produced a better product. They were doing it because it produced a profit. And certainly their business mattered. It really became the foundation for an entire sector. But let me give you a company who does a much better job of answering that same question. You may be familiar with this logo. They've just become the first company ever to pass $3 trillion in value. What I want to do is take you back in time to the early 1980s. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, made a presentation to his internal team. This is an internal video where he talked to them about why their work matters. And this was just one of 2 instances where he discussed purpose. Once through this internal, publicly, through this internal video, and then later through an interview, I believe, with The Economist, not long after this, where I will share with you what he described.
I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds.
Some of you may be too young to recognize these devices at the end as computers. But this is what, when Jobs was making this video, that's what a computer looked like. It was a big box. This was at Xerox, this imagery comes from Xerox PARC, where he had just observed, not through Apple's creation, but through Xerox's creation, two devices that would transform computing. One was the graphical user interface that you see on the right. And you buried a little bit down at the bottom left, you'll see a mouse, literally called a mouse because of its shape with its cord-like tail. And those devices allowed Jobs to transform computing from an engine that counts into his dream of an engine that could draw, something that would enable human creativity, or what he referred to as bicycles of the mind. If you think about how that translates into Apple, think of a bicycle for the mind. A bicycle allows human beings to travel more efficiently than the giant condor by harnessing our internal gyroscope, and of course our ability to pave roads, in order to allow for incredible efficiency of calories per kilometer. A computer does something very similar. It allows us to harness human curiosity and creativity in order to be able to solve hard problems, in order, in Apple's case, to create something new. It became an engine for creativity. So when Apple talks about what they do, it's in order to liberate human creativity. It is literally to serve humanity and make us better than we were yesterday. How do they do that? By making complex technology simple. And you see this in everything they do. It differentiates them so much from their competitors that they take such complex technology and try and make it the simplest device possible, such that you've probably seen a child pick up an iPad and interact with it, or a phone. And what do? They create tools for the mind by making complex technology simple to liberate human creativity. That is a full description of an organization that matters, and its value shows that to be true. And its perseverance and focus on always driving to those goals. And Tim Cook deserves an immense applause for his ability to retain focus on this. And I think it's because he subverted his own ego to that of the founder. So then the question back to Subway became, why does the world need yet another restaurant? If you look at what some of the competitors were saying, Taco Bell was saying everyone deserves good food, and Chipotle was saying, well, everyone deserves wholesome food, and KFC was saying we can serve food in a friendly environment and do it fast. It's all about delivering food. That's what you do, and maybe a little bit about how you do it. But why do we need you? That is not the answer. The formation of pizza submarine sandwiches into Subway recognized three different communities that we serve. So what we do is produce fresh, delicious, affordable, and nutritious food choices made your way, which was a big differentiator in the age of McDonald's, where everything was fried and handed to you pre-made, versus Subway, where you got to assemble as you chose, and it was fresh and delicious. Why? Why did Subway do this? And that's what I sought to answer explicitly for the first time. And what we concluded was that we create better choices for our guests, healthier food choices for families. We create better opportunities for our people. This, if you think about the franchisees, this opportunity to become a millionaire from almost nothing in terms of the investment of a few $1,000s in the sweat of your brow and the dedication of your own family. better opportunities for our people, and as we saw in Puerto Rico, a commitment to better lives in our communities. Subway does all three of these things, and they always have. They've just never said it out loud. We are Subway. Together, we thrive with all these communities. And so it provides direction for the organization. If you're in the business of providing better choices for your guests, then you need to act like better hosts. How can we be better hosts to these guests? If you're going to be in the business of building better opportunities for people, you need to be a better entrepreneur. What are the things you need to know and do every day in order to be better at building your business? And if you're going to create better lives in your communities, you need to be better neighbors. You need to know those around you. You need to care about their lives, and you need to be involved in making them better. Because Subway and those communities together will thrive. That was a pivotal moment for Subway to take pride in the history that they'd earned, and for which I deserve no responsibility or acclaim. I was simply an observer, noting this for them to take pride in their own work. So, thinking of your own enterprise, how do you go about doing this? How do you find your underlying purpose? How do you find your why? Because that's the ultimate thing you need to focus on. And that's why I have drafted a book entitled Purposeful Enterprise to help others go through the same exercise. And it boils down to answering 5 questions, what I call the 5 Ps. Define your purpose, and that's insufficient. And all too often you walk into companies now and you see some kind of tagline on the wall that is a big purpose statement, but it doesn't carry through to the actions and the behaviors and the expectations of everyone in the company and the people they serve. So you have to bring it all the way down to the ground, from purpose to promise, put in place through a set of guiding principles that equip people to ultimately perform. For each of these, there's a question to pose and action to take. Let me run you through it to kind of get you through the gauntlet of defining the 5 Ps. For purpose, you need to answer the question, what is the greater purpose that we serve? Not just profit. Why do we matter? Why does the world need us? They don't need us because we're making profit for ourselves. They don't need us because we're making our shareholders rich. They need us because we're making the world a better place. So you have to answer the question and discover and declare your timeless, aspirational reason for being. Next is your promise. The question you answer here is, what do we commit to provide? What is our promise to them? Now, this is to your customer. What do we promise to provide to our marketplace? And you have to demonstrate that authentic commitment. It could extend to your employees and your communities, but for sure, the world needs to understand that you are promising to deliver on something. How you do it begins to be answered by defining some key principles. How will we behave? And to do that, you set guidelines. It's sort of 10 commandments. What are the things that we need to know in order to take action in a disciplined and aligned way in order to deliver on this purpose? They got to bring that down to people. And it's not just who we are, but whom we serve. So you're going to align all your stakeholders. And I want you to think of your business as being concentric rings of your core team, your employees, your investors, your surrounding community, and the world at large, including your competitors. You need to align around what role you play to align all of these participants, including suppliers, for example, to join you in your mission. And then finally, how are you going to pursue this performance? How are you going to measure it? How are you going to know you're getting it? And to do that, you have to design, measure, and enhance or reinvent your critical activities that deliver on purpose. To start with, you need to at least know what would be the leading indicators that show that I am on or off purpose. Now, I want to show you an example that comes from an arena that you would not expect. Blackstone is a major hedge fund led by co-founder Steve Schwarzman. And they invest for the long term because building successful, resilient businesses that they invest in will lead to better returns, of course, stronger communities, and economic growth that works for everyone. They did the concentric circles that said, if we invest well, and if we invest for the long term, literally act like a hedge fund, we hedge our bets. With each bet that we make a counter bet to make sure that we're getting monitored and reasonable growth ahead of the market, rather than what we've seen with far too many hedge funds is they operate like a gambling system and go bust on other people's money. Schwartzman doesn't do that. He manages this very deliberately, but maybe more importantly, in 2019, he brought together the business roundtable of CEOs who were committed to corporate social responsibility. And among the signatories you see here are the CEOs of Accenture and Abbott Labs, American Electric Power, American Airlines, ADP, and these are just the A's. It goes through Z. You see Jeff Bezos there for Amazon. These are all companies that recognize that there is a commitment to the world, to our climate, to our people, to our economies, as well as to our shareholders that we owe. Among the pantheon of brands that are famous for focusing on a higher purpose are Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia, the ice cream shop that brought us back to sort of natural, wholesome, responsible food development. Patagonia, founded by an explorer who saw pollution taking over the places that he cherished in nature. And so he committed his company to resolving that, not just pollution as it began, but climate change as it exists today. Whole Foods founder is the author of an entire work on the thesis of creating a purposeful enterprise. Apple, of course, we've used as an example already. Logitech is a hero organization of mine. USAA, which is invested in the futures of our US veterans. Of course, my own firm, Ampersand, who's trying to promote this and provide mechanisms to help companies do so. I don't mean to put myself or my firm in the pantheon of greats, but I am trying to promote this work. And this list goes on, including many of the signatories, but not all, of that corporate social responsibility roundtable, because it's hard to do. And you can make lots of declarations and then from the CEO suite, set out a purpose without actually living it. Peter Drucker, a genius, sort of founding father of consultancy, but of business management as a science, said that the business purpose and mission are so rarely given adequate thought, that's perhaps the most important cause of business frustration and failure. I want to thank you for hearing me out on making your own business a purposeful enterprise to design your organization to change the world. I'm Roger Maynard. Feel free to reach me, roger@ampersand.vc. Be happy to help and figure out how we can change the world together. Thank you very much, and thank you, Glenn, for hosting me today.
Thank you, Roger. Wow, that was terrific. Well, just to show you that we're live and in real time, my foot-long Friday email from Subway just popped in.
Don't miss out on that foot long.
But buy two get one free. So we'll see if that becomes dinner tonight.
Okay, good. It's worth it.
No, great job. I couple follow-ups. Going back to kind of the beginning, I love the fact that you inverted the places for the topics, right? Demand goes before supply, right? Customer goes before company, function goes before form. All very, very important as you kind of focus on a purpose. You know, as you were going through your 5 Ps and you hit stakeholders, the first thing before you got to the slide, I said, this is all about the business roundtable. Yeah. That game-changing letter and signature page that came out that said, you know what?
It is all about the roundtable. I mean, they should be so proud of themselves for doing that. It's
the last 3 years, and as we talked kind of in the warm-up, I've been doing some teaching as well, and getting this out to students and getting them to understand that there is a higher purpose for organizations, for people, for entrepreneurs, and getting them to focus on that kind of, let's call it citizenship aspect of being a business or an entrepreneur is really important. So, and as you said, there's a number of obviously prominent people that signed on to that. and moving away. And and when you think about the 5 Ps, and you kind of, if you start off with purpose, right, that's kind of top of the house, right? That's your mission, that's your board, that's your tone at the top. And as it flows all the way through, at the end, performance will then kind of dictate the previous 4, right?
Right.
Either you've you're living it, and you're working it through the organization, and the performance will help underscore that, as you go. It's interesting on the subway story, and I didn't know about the Puerto Rico aspect of that. That's a fascinating talk about stakeholders and community.
Oh, so
and citizenship. I mean, that really needs to be celebrated as you look at that. But it reminds me, I went to college in Pennsylvania, right? So in Pennsylvania, it's a hoagie, right? And in New York, where I am, it's a hero, right? And if you're in Philadelphia, maybe it's or South Jersey, it's a grinder, right? Or submarines, right? That's always the piece that plays out. But what a tremendous story. And the fact that you were there for them, and they recognized that, hey, you told us all this, but now we need you even more. Can you please come back after Fred lost his battle with leukemia? I mean, that's testimony to just the ideas you're giving them, the strategy, the purpose behind that, and that's really fascinating stuff. When you think about it, and I've seen a lot of leadership presentations and things, and you really focused on it. It comes back to the why, right? That often becomes the most important question. And when you had up for Subway, what I thought, the fact that the word better is a great word, because better never rests.
Right? That's exactly right. Better never rests. It's like the difference between winning and victory. It's the pursuit that matters.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I take some long distance train trips from time to time, and to me, and people say, well, why do you do that? I said, it's the journey. It's not so much the getting there. It's the process and as you move through it, and better never rests. And you focus, for that organization and their franchisees and ultimately the customers, choices, opportunities, lives, right? And how do you then translate that into a business and then pushing that out into the marketplace? So it's a tremendous story. I bet a lot of people don't have that picture of the garage, so that should be in like the National Archives.
It is, I think.
Oh, it is.
It is in Silicon Valley, and you can still visit it to this day. It is literally a shrine in that industry. One thing I wanted to mention to you, Glenn, because even you and I are not old enough to remember that Milton Friedman, a genius economist, started us inadvertently down this path of pursuit of profit over purpose in 1970. He was interviewed, I think, in the New York Times, and literally said that the purpose of enterprise is to serve shareholders, increase shareholder value. And we have, through our entire adulthood, heard all of the newly minted MBAs who then rise to the seats of power understand that my job is to serve my shareholder. I am the shepherd of their investment. I need to deliver on that investment. And sure, that's true, but it's really secondary. To do that, you have to understand who your customer is, and you have to understand who your community is, because failing to serve them will ultimately fail to serve your shareholders.
When you look at global citizenship and stakeholders and higher purpose in general, you brush up against obviously ESG and impact investing.
Yep.
The UN Sustainable Development Goals, those 17. I mean, there's big stuff in there, right? Poverty, hunger, water. I mean, all of that becomes so important. I was at a couple of years ago, the SEC, as part of their rulemaking, they do public open meetings and the like, and they were doing a bunch of things with shareholder engagement and empowerment on the proxy side for voting. And there was a number of segments on kind of just what you talked about here, and watching the push and the pull, to use one of your arrows from earlier, about shareholder value versus stakeholder. And there was a number of people, including some former senators, that were on the panel. It was like, duty and care. How could you possibly pursue something like an ESG thing if it's going to take away from a shareholder? And he's written op-eds in the Wall Street Journal. You've seen those thoughts a lot. But that balancing of it, it really is a change. It's a mindset. It's kind of you almost have to give yourself, in a way, give yourself up for it to come back and say, okay, we have to reset. And that's important too, especially for an organization, whether it's a place like Subway, where you obviously have the corporate side and the leadership, and then how do you make sure that your franchisees are embodying that same spirit that you have, right? And that becomes a culture call. And organizational behavior is always incredible, along those lines. And then from the company itself, how do you surround yourself with advisors, board members that kind of have that same kind of mission or sense of purpose?
Well, Glenn, that one of the great torments of great CEOs, let's use Jamie Dimon at Chase Bank, for example, one of the signatories of the Business Roundtable. He's tormented by the fact that he's got boards who are looking for quarterly returns, not boards, but the board, but shareholders.
Yes.
And shareholder activists. So because what it encourages is short-term investing and exactly the kind of shortfalls that results in. And if you're rewarding CEOs on a short-term basis for shareholder return, they can do all kinds of things to make themselves rich, inflate the outcome, and actually hurt the company and hurt the customer, and ultimately the shareholder. So this roundtable was such an important vehicle for them to be able to push back to the market and say, you need to understand what's more important. And for much the same reason that Bezos and so many Silicon Valley ventures have stayed private for such a long time. Remember that Amazon lost money forever in the pursuit of market share. Had they been public already, it would have been very difficult to do that. And once they were public, Bezos, fortunately, as a founder, owner, entrepreneur, was still able to say, you know what, you can demand all you want, but I'm going for a goal here, and I'm going to keep investing, and I'm not seeing profits for 3 more years. And they let them do it, and and it paid off, obviously, handsomely.
I was with the New York Stock Exchange for 18 years, and worked with companies on the whole going public, and
fantastic.
And one of the early lessons we used to do with the companies was we would sit down with them, and the first question we would ask them was, "Sure you want to do this?"
Right.
For just the reasons you just outlined. That how you can feel about people questioning your every move, or looking for that instant return, or coming back and saying, "I don't want to invest in that particular program," or "No, that's not important to me." Are you really ready to take on that kind of pushback and criticism? And then that's always a tough spot. And you're right. In the world of, and we've seen this the last number of years with these unicorns and things, they're worth so much money because they're kind of still in that cocoon.
Right.
And then, they're able to be innovative and be entrepreneurial and still get lots of accolades. And you do private share sales and things, so there's ways to come up with a valuation as opposed to, say, just a straight stock price. But it's fascinating that how many of them stay in that state for a long time.
Oh yeah, and increasingly so. I mean, they try to, obviously, for the same reason that you on the stock exchange were trying to ensure that entrepreneurs understood the cost of inviting the public in to help them manage their business. Because with the advent of computer-based trading and the flourishing of day traders, so many of the people who now own your company are in it to win it in 24 hours, which means that they're increasingly short-term focused and will buy and sell like any other commodity. And you'll become a commodity, you'll die like one.
Certainly with the advent of electronic trading and day trading, if you were to ask a CEO or a chairman, well, who's your shareholder? They would almost have to come back and say, check with me tomorrow morning, because it may turn over. It may turn over pretty significantly between today and tomorrow, right? But it's interesting too. Just when you look at shareholders, the institutions now, right? That the Blackstones of the world, the employee retirement systems of the world, all of those folks, State Street, while they used to be known as, and I guess technically they're still considered passive investors, they are making a very large push and an imprint on higher purpose. They're coming back and they're saying, you know what, we're pretty significant. Hey, we own 7% of the company here through our customers, right? Here's what's important to them. And if it's important to them, it's important to us. So it needs to be important to you, right? As you kind of look through it.
Yeah, we are definitely headed in the right direction.
We're living in fascinating times. I think your 5 Ps are just, that should be on everybody's desk. And then again, and looking to the, well, how do we demonstrate it? What are the 10 commandments here that I need to follow? And again, that big question, whom do we serve, right? Right. At the end of the day, it's really these stakeholders. It's the community we're in. Are we a good neighbor? These are all incredible questions for companies to challenge themselves on, right? In that pursuit of trying to get better, which again, as we said, never kind of rest. You don't get any days off from being better, right? Right. No snow days, right? No snow days for being better. Well, listen, Roger, this has been fascinating. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Thanks, Glenn. It is the email address roger@ampersand.vc.
.vc.
Not .com, it's .vc.
Okay, and how about social media-wise? Are you on any platforms? Or?
Yes, I'm on Twitter as at Roger Mader. I'm on Instagram as Ampersand. You'll find me mostly in Twitter and Ampersand.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for joining us today. Fascinating discussion. Purposeful Enterprise. Excellent presentation. I tell you, I got some great notes here, and like I said, I get to interact with this kind of stuff every day, and you're a trailblazer in it. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Glenn, and thanks to you and Stelios and all the leading entrepreneurs of the world.
All right. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take good care.
Take care.
Bye.